Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. It is Friday, May 1st, 2015, and I'm Leanne McAdoo.
And I'm Rob Dew. Here's a look at what's coming up.
Tonight, a prisoner who shared the police transport van with Freddie Gray says that Freddie was trying to injure himself.
I'm kicking my ass, damn I!
Meanwhile, the New York Post is reporting that the police van made a mystery stop before heading to the precinct. Plus, what do Al Sharpton, the mayor of Baltimore, and Barack Obama all have in common? Well, they want to federalize the nation's police. That can't be good. All that plus more coming up next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
Six officers were charged today in the Freddie Gray case after a state medical examiner's report determined the cause of death was homicide. And now the state's attorney has also said that the arrest itself was illegal. The cops never found any probable cause for his arrest. The officers are now facing up to 20 years in prison, and the driver could face up to 63 years in prison. So, obviously this is pretty quickly this kind of turned around. The state's attorney said she was definitely going to give these people some justice, and very quickly she did that. Yesterday we saw the police turn it over to her.
Because she actually has ties with the police department.
Yes, her mother, father, aunts and uncles, but she seemed to be pretty determined to bring some justice here in this case and to not, that might be something that really good. We need someone on the inside to sort of sweep away that thin blue line of protection that they've been sort of experiencing and enjoying for decades. Now, yesterday there was an article that came out from the Washington Post, and it was right before the police actually came out and made their announcement that they had concluded their investigation. This report was saying that a prisoner who was sharing a police transport van with Freddie Gray told investigators that he could hear Gray banging against the walls, and so basically saying that Freddie Gray was trying to injure himself. And they just took this and ran with it.
It sounds like it was spun to indicate that, not that that's what the guy really said, because he's come out since then and given interviews and say, no, I wasn't trying to say that. I'm in fear for my life now because of how this is coming out and what really happened. Because if you look, where there's a metal partition dividing the two prisoners where they were there, so he couldn't really see what was going on.
He couldn't see him at all, so that's just him taking a guess as to what's going on. That'll never hold up in court. That's not a credible witness. But there was some other details in the report as well that were just kind of sketchy. They were given the document under the condition the prisoner wouldn't be named. They said he feared for his safety. The document, written by a Baltimore police investigator, it also says it wasn't clear whether there was any other additional evidence to back up this person's version of events. And according to multiple law enforcement sources, there it is, we've investigated ourselves, and they said there's no evidence that his fatal injuries were caused during his videotaped arrest and interaction with police officers. This is according to multiple law enforcement officers. So now, like you said, then the police kind of rolled this out yesterday, and they said, this is what we found in our report. And they mentioned that there was a fourth stop that was never recorded. They never even reported this to investigators. 30 people they talked to. There was about 30 people who the investigators talked to. They never once mentioned this mystery fourth stop. It was only revealed later because of some private surveillance footage that showed that they made this additional stop that they had never reported. So now we're supposed to believe these 30 people's testimony about what happened?
Right, and these are the same cops that came out and said there's a fire over here started by criminals, and it turned out it was started by their tear gas grenade earlier in the week. Yeah. And also the ones that said we have credible sources that the Crips and the Bloods are coming together to try and kill us, and the Crips and Bloods responded and said, no, we're coming together to try to stop and protect our communities. And what was interesting, I played that video with Darren a few nights ago. Those seemed like they were older boys in their mid to upper 20s. And if you look at most crime, I think it's like 75 to 80% of all like aggravated crime and stuff like that is done by 18 to 23-year-olds. Right. So it's the young kids that need to be schooled a little bit. And so the older guys were coming together to school these kids, like, don't be doing this, don't riot, don't do all this stuff. Right. But that's what you're going to get. They've been bred on this whole philosophy of we have to fight back. We have to burn things down anytime we don't agree with what the cops do. And then eventually they grow out of that. But that's where most of the blame, I think, is in that and out-of-towners coming in and trying to stir stuff up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I'm not going to excuse anyone rioting and burning things down and getting into criminal activity and stuff like that. But, you know, let's not even talk about how the IRS is constantly looting, or corporations are looting the environment and everything. So why don't people get mad about that? You know, here these people are getting angry because the cops are basically saying that this man severed his own spine, crushed his own larynx, broke his own leg, just beat himself up. I mean, I'm pretty sure, don't we have some surveillance footage of him beating himself up?
We put out this satire footage of what, because they don't have any cameras in the cars, which is, I think, very odd. Why would you not have cameras in there to see what prisoners are doing? But we put out some surveillance footage that, of course, it's satire, but this is kind of what, from the perspective of what the cops are saying, this is what he did to himself. So let's go to that right now.
All Adam shift units, switch to C channel. Adam shift to C flat, 92205. 13 and 14. Alright, you're in reference 10-4. One person just went in that area. That boy leg looks broke! In the block.
Kicking my ass, divine!
So obviously ridiculous there, and we just kind of put that out to show how silly it is to say that this man is back there doing that. I mean, so crazy things have happened. Who knows? Maybe he really was, but now the witness who was in the van, or the semi-witness, he could only hear. He doesn't know what he was actually hearing. He says that he did hear some banging on the walls, but the key part is he couldn't see. There was a metal partition. He had no idea what was going on. And according to the reporter, when the police did eventually seek treatment for Gray, the paramedics who arrived thought that they were being dispatched to treat a broken arm. So they didn't realize that they were coming to the police station to bring him back from not having a pulse.
Right.
So even there, they're not being forced.
And they broke his leg. They didn't even break his arm.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, so in all kinds of things,
video.
And then I think that's one of the things that they're being charged with is failure to render aid, and that's something that everyone can agree on, that they failed there. Now, Al Sharpton, the huge race-baiting government pimp, Al Sharpton has come out demanding that the Justice Department step in, take over policing in the country. That's exactly what I said on Tuesday, that this is what it's all about.
That is why Al Sharpton is in the position he's in, because he owes millions of dollars to the IRS, and this is his way of paying that back.
Yeah, paying
is by
his debt.
being that mouthpiece to call for more government intervention, which is what always happens. Oh, we need more government intervention. The problem gets worse when there's more government intervention.
That's the whole problem with Baltimore, is that they've been running there with really liberal policies that have not trickled down to the citizens. It's just all the cronyism. They've been filling their own pockets. So now Sharpton comes in and says, the answer to this is even more government. We got to federalize the police department and also have to fight states' rights. So he wants to do away with states' rights, federalize the police, and, you know, obviously it doesn't take a genius to point out the fact that it's the feds who have been militarizing the police in the first place. They're the ones who have been giving them all the MRAPs and the machinery and you know, the war machines that on the streets. And
I'm surprised Reverend Sharpton didn't hold up the Rand Corporation plan, for which tells you what we have to do is militarize the police, essentially. That's what the plan is all about.
Yeah, well, the Obama administration, this is something that was started in the Clinton era, and he has just taken it and run with it. But it's the Task Force on 21st Century Policing that imposes federal standards on state and local police. Obviously, they want to get that money, get those machinery, that MRAPs. But here's the thing. It's almost like they know that the police departments are going to be their own undoing. It's like, here, we're going to give you these toys to play with that you're not even trained for and that really have no place on the streets of America. And then all the citizens are going to get really upset with you. And now
they're going to demand a change.
Yeah. And they don't own that. They don't own those military weapons. They're borrowing them. They're borrowing them and maintaining the MRAPs. So they're already all positioned in place. And so it's kind of super convenient when things like Jade Helm and everything pop off. They're like, oh, thanks. Yeah, so it's just super convenient because all this equipment is now staged all over the country. The military can swoop in at any time and reclaim it.
Right, like a Jade Helm type scenario. And speaking of that, we're going to have a report from Alex at the end of the show. He's going to do a big breakdown of Jade Helm. We had an interesting caller today talking about the logo and with the shoe in the middle that kind of looked like a graphic screw up, but it actually does look like a shoe when you really look at it like that. So we have that. We've got an amazing interview with David Knight coming up with some nurses who are against forced vaccinations. And then we have some vaccine propaganda as well with the new Netflix movie Daredevil, or the TV series, and then with some other different sources of media out there where they're really just pushing it in our faces that we're crazy if we don't just bow down and take everything the government, wants to inject into us if we don't just take it willingly.
Right. Yeah. And that's what it's all about here. It's not about us telling you to rise up and two arms. It's about exposing this, shining a light on it, and letting them know that we're holding them accountable. It's not about even doing anything else about that other than shining a light on this tyranny so that they have to dismantle their programs. Now we have a report from John Bown. We've got a little justice being served in Baltimore. But what's about to happen to the rest of America? It seems like we're getting ready for some United Nations intervention.
Are you all telling us that the arresting officers covered up or lied about stopping that police van after Freddie Gray was inside the vehicle?
So what I will tell you is that we have stated from the beginning, when we have information that we're able to share, we will. And as the commissioner said today, it would be inappropriate for us to further comment on the status of the investigation.
Sources are saying that Freddie Gray died as a result of slamming his head inside the police van he was being transported in. The medical examiner says the wound matched the bolt in the area of the van Gray was held in. The autopsy reveals that there is no evidence that Gray hit his head on his own, and also that the injuries Gray sustained were exactly like those of someone that had been in a major car accident. An unidentified prisoner in the van with Gray said he heard Gray banging himself against the walls trying to injure himself. A second detainee also came forward and said he only heard a little banging. Investigators also discovered that the van carrying Gray made a previously unknown stop while Gray was in the vehicle, and that he was not strapped into a seatbelt, according to police. It's beginning to appear that Gray may have been subjected to the police brutality tactic known as a rough ride. In a rough ride, suspects are usually handcuffed in the back of the vehicle without being secured by a seatbelt. They are then assaulted by the erratic driving of the police van driver. One sharp turn or sudden stop can do as much or more abuse than an actual physical assault. The abused prisoner is then faced with a he said, she said situation. From the New York Times, for example, in June 1980, Freddie Franklin was walking on 75th Street on the south side of Chicago with a friend when he claimed a group of police officers wrongfully arrested him, placed him in handcuffs, and forced him into the back of a police wagon. He landed face down on the floor of the vehicle. Two officers drove the van recklessly and erratically in order to throw him around the floor of the van, he claimed, in a federal lawsuit. According to court documents, by the time Mr. Franklin arrived at the police station, he lay bleeding after biting off his lower lip. The same year Mr. Franklin was injured, another handcuffed man suffered a broken neck after he fell off a bench in the back of a police van after the vehicle made a sharp turn. He won a $900,000 settlement. At least two other Baltimore men, Jeffrey Alston and Dondi Johnson, were paralyzed after police van rides in separate cases that led to lawsuits. Mr. Alston, paralyzed from the neck down, settled for $6 million in 2004. 30-plus detectives were assigned to the case. Still, there are no definitive answers. The Baltimore Police Department has now turned the investigation over